Welcome to Karpos Life. This is our second episode. I'm excited to be here with Matthew and Stephen. Last time we talked about the foundational pieces to life, I guess. What are you doing behind the scenes? What's the development that goes into your life and the focus areas? Today we want to talk about just tuning out the noise. And so I guess we'll start off with how are things going for you?
Yeah, no, everything's been going really well. Excited about this topic today. There's noise everywhere in our world, in our life, and I think it's an important topic. I'm looking forward to discussing with you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, same. By the way, love the new setup. Very, very cozy. Super easy to have a sort of casual chat.
Absolutely.
So, congrats to you and Victoria for putting this together.
What's pretty sweet about this table is it's got a fold-up top. I can play some poker, although I don't know how to play poker. I've never actually played. I don't know what you do, like five. I know how to play, what's the one where you just 21 or something?
Blackjack.
Yes, blackjack. That I'm amazing
Secret gambler over here.
Yes.
Pretending.
I've actually never, well, yeah, I did. I've gambled once in my life now. I went to that casino up in wherever it is. The really big one.
Oh, Windstar?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Largest casino in the world is what they say.
I won $100 on a Willie Nelson slot machine, and then that was it. I was done. I was like, hey, I'm good. I'm ahead. I'm moving.
I'm too cheap with my money. I can't. I've got to I need something. I'll buy a T-shirt or something. I have to carry something away. The gambling's too stressful for me.
I did bet on a dog one time at a dog track in Wichita. And at the time I was young and I only had $15, and my friend was like, oh, it's guaranteed. This dog is so good. And it finished like fourth. And then I didn't have any money for the weekend. Because, back in the day when we were young, we could have a good weekend on $15. But
I don't remember those times.
No, $15. Yeah, back in the day, that was a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So tuning out the noise.
Speaking of which.
Yeah. Speaking of which. Yeah, so, I mean, we do think about it, and there's been a lot of just different things when I was kind of thinking about this episode myself. I was thinking about, man, there's so many distractions nowadays, and it could be TV, it could be streaming services, it could be, even things about like artificial intelligence and how fast things are progressing and just all these changes. And so sometimes I guess I kind of wonder, I know the things that I do personally, I've gotten off all social media, and I'm not saying that's a must, but I was kind of wondering what you guys have done or what you do to sort of tune out the noise, because there's so much stuff like politics and all this talk about AI, and there's all these different social media platforms. And then I was just laughing too. There's so many streaming services, and I was just thinking about it. They talk about cord cutters. Mm-hmm. I thought I was a cord cutter, but I'm really not, because now I just have like 70 million different streaming services, and I spend so much money on that. But anyways, I kind of wanted to understand what you guys do personally to tune out the noise, or what do you think is some noise in your lives that you should consider focusing on? Of, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that as much, or things like that.
Yeah, no, there is. I was just sitting here as you were saying that, in podcasts, right? I mean, how many? It's funny that we're starting this podcast and we're excited about it, but I mean, how many podcasts are out there? And you could spend your entire day listening to podcasts and maybe learn a lot of things, but I mean, you could just spend the whole day just in a podcast and forget that you have work, or family, school, whatever else.
Yeah.
So I think in my life, I just try to me, it's about what I prioritize. And, there's nothing wrong with listening to a podcast. There's nothing wrong with, if you have social media or different things like that, but just being able to prioritize the things that are important that you need to get done versus the things that you want to get done. And so you've got to just say, okay, I need to get this done because this is the responsibility that I have, either with my family, with my job, whatever it may be. And then if there's some extra time left over, then I can kind of venture into, some of these other things that I like to do, but they're not necessities in my life.
Right. Yeah. that is interesting because it's kind of like what is the noise that is shaping my thinking? Like what are the things that are I don't know about you, but what are the things that are shaping? And when I talk about noise, I'm talking about like all the different platforms. It could be books, it could be people, it could be services, it could be politics, whatever. What do you think? Like from your perspective, Stephen, what do you think is something that, or things that are shaping your thinking?
I think this is such a deep conversation, actually, because when I think of noise, yes, I do think of it in terms of, podcasts and TV and social media and friends and all these other things. And so, but I also take it, at least for me, I take it somewhat a level deeper in that what is the noise just rattling around in my own head? What noise am I creating for myself? And I always try and think very, very deeply and clearly around, well, what am I allowing my mind to focus on? And sometimes the external things, social media, podcast things, that can kind of start feeding your mind and your thoughts. But oftentimes we sit alone in our thoughts, and do I let my thoughts kind of become noise for my life? And so understanding what is the difference, and I like the way you put it, Matt, like, prioritizing those things which are the most important, those things that are going to lead to growth. I mean, going back to the conversation about fruits, right? It all starts in the mind. That is the garden of our life. And whatever we plant into that garden will bear fruit. And so that's why I think it's so important to understand, first and foremost, what is the difference between noise versus something that is actually going to be useful and valuable and beneficial to ultimate growth in our lives. So I think having an understanding of that first, and then that leads to what Matt is talking about, which is, okay, then prioritizing. Oh, okay, I know that, this thought or this thing falls into this category, either good or bad. I know that this thought or this thing falls into this category, or the good or bad. Okay, now, based on that categorization, I can start prioritizing my thoughts. But again, I think I love the conversation. I love the topic because it's actually, really profound and deep. Insofar as if you think about everything in life, right? It's a battle for the mind. And we are the gatekeepers of our minds. And sometimes we can also be our own worst enemy in terms of how we allow things to percolate and fester, even just between our own two ears.
Yeah, it goes back to what you talked about, that book, As a Man Thinketh.
Yeah.
And it just goes back to who or what. Like, sometimes I wonder, or I think about, I don't know if you guys do this, what am I allowing to affect my mood as well? Because like I personally, I'm the type of person that I can be so high and so up, like you close a big deal or something positive happens, and then literally within the next 45 minutes to an hour, something can happen. Maybe I read an article, or maybe something just negative happens, and it's like I'm just down, and I ebb and I flow. And that's personally for me. I have to limit the influences and the noise in my life, because I feel like I'm a really emotional person. Not that everybody doesn't have emotions, but like Victoria is very matter of fact. I'm very matter of. Somebody said it before, feelers. I've got a lot of feelers, and I take things personally and stuff. And so then, I ebb and flow. And so I have to think about, and I would ask you guys, do things influence your moods?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, even good or bad, right? I mean, to your point, I think we live in such a polarized world right now where it's almost like there is no middle ground. And so you're either on one end of the spectrum or the other. And that can then, thus lead to, I'm either on this end of the spectrum from a mood, or this end of the spectrum.
Right.
And so it's almost everywhere we look right now. It's just, it's very binary. You're either, good or bad. You're either this or that. And so I think depending on how much you latch onto that, absolutely. Right. And I think, unfortunately, the bad news, the hard news, the scary news, the sad news, that's the stuff that sells most. And that's the stuff I think that people consume more than anything. But yeah, absolutely. External stuff can and does affect my mind.
It is weird, because I do think about like growing up, I don't know how you guys felt about this, but growing up, I felt like the news was more, I think it was different than what it is today.
Sure.
Like you would go there and you would actually get a good story, or you felt like they were there to help you. And now I feel like the news and the media and things like that are just there to scare me, to get me to come back and see what is next, or what's the next thing that's happening. And it just distracts you. And I mean, honestly, it's just depressing. I mean, there's so much comparison, and there's anger, and there's division, and there's all these different things that are just influencing your mind. And it's like kind of these fear tactics, I
But
guess.
that's the point, right? The point of the news is to influence your mind.
It really is.
It's not anymore, to your point. Like, I mean, I remember growing up in South Africa, the news would be on at 8 o'clock every night. My dad would, put it on, and it was some boring old guy just blah, 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 blah. This happened and that happened and this happened. And I was like, this is so boring. Switch it off. And these days it's just sensationalized for the point. I mean, I strongly believe that all news outlets are, propaganda machines, right? Trying to move people to think in a certain way.
Yep.
It's not anymore the pursuit of objective truth.
Yeah. Yeah. And like noise isn't just like sound. It isn't just, you just made a good point. It can be distractions. It can be comparison. It can be outrage, like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. Urgency that isn't yours, things that become important just because somebody tells you that it's important. And then somehow you think, well, maybe I should be paying attention to this. Like the whole Epstein files. I probably shouldn't even talk about it. I'll get pulled into some algorithm or something. But I was like, I don't even care about it. Like, I mean, it's sad and it's gross and it's disgusting and it's awful and all of these things. But I'm like, I just don't need that influence coming into my life. And I don't know, but do you, Matthew, do you kind of, when you think about noise and moods, I know Stephen talked about absolutely, but do you feel those things affect you as well? And
Yeah, no, I mean, everything does. And I guess as I'm sitting here listening to you guys talk, I mean, we're using the term noise, but to me, it's distractions. And everything is based on, I mean, we're talking about the news. I mean, I'm in sales. That's what news has become. I mean, they're looking for viewers, they're looking for clicks because they can sell advertising. And then, everyone has their own one-side agenda. So you keep that narrative going up, so you get those repeat viewers. So you can sell more advertising, and you can make. So, but I think this distractions is how when I hear the word noise, it's distractions, because it's things that are out there that are meant to get us and our minds going in a different direction than we know they should be. Not on the foundation like we talked about last time. We have foundation, we have goals, we have things that we want to accomplish, and then all these other things in life are thrown at us, trying to get us off that path.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I made a little quote here. Noise is anything loud enough to pull you away from who you're called to be. And, we all know from just our religious backgrounds and everything that we're called to be something more and to grow and to change. And then we have all this noise and all these influences that are trying to shape us into completely something else, like keep us off track, keep us distracted, keep us angry or fighting or divided, and all of these different things. So what do you guys think? What distractions do you think feel productive but aren't?
That's a great question.
Feel
actually.
productive but aren't.
Yeah, because I think about that sometimes. I'm like, well, how like people will just have meetings for the sake of having meetings.
Yeah, I think, man, the thing that comes to mind for me is, I think occupation can be a distraction.
Yeah.
I think it can feel very productive. You can spend so much time on something, and then when the day is over, you look back and you're like, what did I actually accomplish today?
Yeah.
What did I accomplish that was meaningful, that was useful, that helped me be a better person, that helped me be a better dad, a better husband, which ultimately, as we're talking about prioritizations, right? I mean, those are the things that should bubble to the top. But I think especially as men, right, we can sometimes get very, very focused and enamored with our work, our occupation.
Yeah.
And if we're not careful, that feels very productive, but that can be a big distraction, pulling us away from those things that are the most important.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a guy I worked with years ago, and on his desk, he kept a little, well, he had a calendar, you know, those kind you can just pull off, but he kept it on this one that said, there's never been a day that I felt like I spent too much time with my son.
Yeah, I love that.
And I thought that's really, really poignant because, and meaningful, because it is true. We fill our lives with all of these distractions and all these things that make it seem like it's productive. But then at the end of the day, you get home. There was this guy I worked with as well, and he always talked about circling the barn, where you just go around and around and you have the same meetings about the same things to never have to make a decision. And yet we feel like we're being productive because, oh yeah, we had this meeting or we did this. I think the biggest thing for me is work. I think that's the biggest distraction, where it's like I love what I do, but sometimes I feel like, was I as productive today as I could have been? And did I do the most important things? So I think, going back to what you just said, it's kind of like making sure you have priorities and then sticking with them.
The way I try and look at it as well is, what are the regrets I'm going to have on my deathbed? Like, am I going to look back and be like, man, I'm so happy that I spent 3,000 hours on that spreadsheet. Right?
Right.
I mean, it was the best spreadsheet
Yeah.
I've ever built, right? Or what, right? And so I always try and look at things through that imperfectly.
But you never know. I mean, Veronica could be rubbing your head, Stephen, that was the most beautiful spreadsheet.
And then I won't regret that. And then I'll look back on my deathbed and say that was the best spreadsheet, best use of my time. But I mean, that's the way I try to look at it, right? What ultimately matters, right? Mm-hmm. What are the things that once all is said and done, you're going to look back on and reflect on and say, that was worth it. I'm glad I spent my time there.
Yeah.
Because work is work.
Well, you said time, and that's really the key to all this, because I know there's days where I'm like, I'll tell Betsy, I don't have time. Hey, we're gonna walk the dogs. We're gonna walk the dogs this evening. Oh man, I don't have time. I don't have time. But a lot of it is, and what you just said, being, and I try to think about this in my days. Am I being efficient versus being busy?
Yeah.
And I'll tell a lot of our new hires, if I'm the field trainer for them, that don't confuse being busy versus being efficient and productive, because you can work 2 hours and be very efficient and get a lot done, and you can work 10 hours and get nothing done.
Yeah.
And so, but you were really busy that day. So I think a lot of it is just, we talk about, we don't have time. We're not being efficient that day or in that stage of our life, and trying to figure out, okay, how do I be more efficient so that I can, to your point, get the things done I need to get done, but also have the time to do the important things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you think about what we're talking about here, and we talk about noise, and we talk about productivity and tuning it out, and what is the most important things to focus on and stuff like that. And the thing is if we don't guard our mind, as we've talked about, the noise will govern it. And the noise could be like, one of the things that I've done at work is, unless it's my boss, outside of that, I don't care who it is. If you're going to set a meeting up with me, it needs an agenda. I need to know, what are you needing me in this meeting for? Because then I can say, well, I can answer these 7 things in an email. I don't need to sit on a call for 30 minutes. Just, we're going to do this, 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 and this. So I ask for agendas with every meeting. And then I won't join a meeting if there's no agenda, unless it was my boss. And, he usually gives good, clear subjects and makes sense. And, but that's one thing. It does help you become more efficient when you have an agenda and all of that. So where do you guys feel like you're reacting versus leading? So when it comes to noise, when it comes to productivity, when it comes to, these areas that we're talking about, do you guys feel like you're reacting versus actually leading? Because sometimes I split between, where sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I just get tired, and I'm like, I'm just going to go along with this. I'll just do that. Versus, hey, this isn't efficient. We're not being effective here. We're wasting people's times. And do you guys ever feel like that, where you're just reacting versus taking a next step and becoming that leader that you know you should be?
You know, going back to just like the corporate world for a second, because I think there's some very, very useful tools that we glean from the corporate world that we can apply in our personal and our private lives. And that is the importance of clear strategy, clear goals, clear understanding of what is important first and foremost, because you can't really tell what is not important if you don't first know what is important.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, looking at our personal lives, I think that's super important as well, to say, okay, let's do some, you know, as men, as husbands, as fathers, as Christians, let's kind of do some inventory and truly understand, well, what are the things that are important to me? What are those priorities in my life? Establish those first, at least have an understanding of what those are first, because then you have a contrast against which to compare the things that are noise. And I think that's ultimately where, coming back to your question about leading versus reacting, if you don't have that clarity in your life first, you're always going to be reacting.
Right.
Right? You're fumbling through life, right? Trying to figure out, you know, does this work? Isn't this work? Is this where I should be spending my time or not? And so I think, firstly, have clarity on what is important, and then prioritize, set the time. And that's not to say that there isn't a time for the other stuff, right? I think sometimes that's very important as well. Is to like, I don't know if you guys are gamers. I'm not, but I have a bunch of friends that aren't. Like, they're like, look, this is important for me because it gets me, you know, my mental clarity back, my acuity. It gets me, you know, back on track. It's my refresh. It's my reset. And so, you know, working out, things of that nature. I think having also an understanding of, okay, they may not be the most, you know, high in terms of priority, but they're important to help me do some of the other things.
Yeah.
But limiting them, right? Being disciplined about them.
Yeah. I am a gamer. I like to play sports games, and I make the odds incredibly towards me, slanted.
Towards you.
I'll do like the lowest of the lowest modes, and I'll turn all this stuff off, and then I'll just go through and, like, I've been playing the college football, and I took, like, I don't know, Kent State all the way to the national championship, and it was awesome. I won the national championship against Georgia. It was like 70-2 or something like that. They did get a safety on me, but yeah. I'll play some video games. It's funny. There was a quote by Jim Rohn, and he said, wherever you're at, be there. Meaning whatever you're doing, let that be what you're doing in that moment. You know, and we see it a lot nowadays. You'll see a family out at dinner, and they're all on their phones.
Much. Yeah, too much.
Yeah, and nobody's really engaged in conversation. And it's kind of sad because it's just so different when we were kids and when I was younger. And I know that everybody gets older, and times change, and things change. But I do personally feel like it was a completely different time. And though people say we're more connected now than we've ever been, I feel like we're personally more disconnected now because people just sit in their rooms and they're on their phones, or they're sitting around in the living room and they're all on their phones, you know, and I'll have people come and visit and they'll be on, like we had some people at church when she has people over for dinner, her and her husband, they actually ask you to leave your phone at the entryway on the table. And it seems a little bit extreme, but I get it, because otherwise people are just on their phones. You're somewhere else, and you're not even in the conversation. You're looking at Jimmy's new photos of his dog, and you know, I don't know, but that just goes back to kind of like the whole idea of what are the real priorities? What are the priorities for you in your life?
Well, I'm thinking of this and see if y'all agree, but I think a lot of the noise and the distractions that are out there are meant to isolate us. You know, as you're saying there, because with all the technology that we have, I mean, you look at just all the studies, and especially with, you know, young adults and different things in our society, how disconnected and lonely they feel, because yet they have, you know, all these different, whether it's gaming or whatever it may be, these distractions, this noise is out there, but a lot of it is meant to isolate.
Yeah.
Whereas, like I said, you know, we like getting together, and whether we're doing a podcast or not, like we'll have these conversations all the time just because we like hanging out with each other and talking and like minds. And there's so many people that don't have that.
Yeah.
And it's really sad. But again, it's because again, so much of the distraction is isolating.
Yeah.
And materialistic. I mean, I think I've read some of those studies as well, especially in the youth, like the rise of like depression and anxiety and, mental issues is off the charts with young people. I don't know if you guys have seen those charts where they correlate the rise of anxiety and depression and even suicides amongst younger people, and they correlate that against the rise of social media. And there is a direct correlation. And so to your point, I think we are more connected, but at such a superficial way that there's no depth to those connections anymore.
Yep.
Like we've replaced fewer deep interpersonal connections, like the ones you were talking about, Matt, about getting together and having a deep conversation about stuff that matters, connecting at a deep level. We as a society have replaced those with tons of superficial connections. And then you add the layer of social media on top of that, especially for the youth, it becomes trying to measure up to a bar that's unattainable in so many ways. And I have young kids, right? I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I never grew up with social media. I mean, I had my first social media account when I was in my 30s. Thankfully, because otherwise there'd be a bunch of stuff recorded out there that I wouldn't want anyone seeing.
I feel that.
But I fear for my kids, because kind of growing up in this world where there is always going to be that. It's a distraction. It's a pull. It's a benchmark or a measure against which young people measure themselves socially. And it's so unhealthy.
Well, it's noise. I mean,
tremendous noise.
Yeah. I mean, because it's comparison. And yeah, I think you're right that it's just all this distraction. And I think distraction is a modern weapon of the enemy, of Satan.
Oh, 100%.
I really do.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the whole point. Get the person off track.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I mean,
it goes a path.
Yeah, goes back to that book, Screw Tape Letters, and I read it, and it's a difficult book to read just because of when it was written.
Yeah, it was a little darkish.
Yeah,
yeah,
but it is true.
Yeah.
When you think about it, because the one devil training the younger devil, or the apprentice, and he's like, don't focus on that. It'd be like, well, Matthew doesn't struggle with that, so don't. Like Chris isn't on social media, so don't focus on that. He doesn't even care about it. What he does care about are these things, and comparison, or this or that, and that's how the enemy works: is get us distracted, get us divided. Because I was thinking about even games as a kid. I mean, I used to play. I mean, I've played video games my entire life, but you'd have to go to your friend's house. There was no Discord. There was no throwing on the headphones, and it is cool. I mean, it's fun, because one of my cousins lives way up in Kansas City, and I'd never see him, but we can play online. Okay, I get that. That's fun. Or my son-in-law, we'll do that. But when that's the only way that you connect with people, you begin to isolate, and then you can't even, when in public or with other people, you don't even know how to associate. So it's like, hey, Stephen, do I text you? No, we're sitting here. Let's just talk.
But you're so right. Like, I remember also growing up, like the video games that we had were like, 1v1 player games, right?
Yeah.
Where you were like
little stick men.
Yeah, you were battling each other, like,
Yep.
but in person. I remember when, was it like Dune or Duke Nukem or one of those like very first person games came out, and I don't. You probably remember this. I remember the first time we ever LAN connected one of those games.
Yeah.
But we still did it in the same room. Like, it was all
Yeah.
just wide connection, and it was the coolest
A
thing.
LAN party. Yeah.
So fun,
Yep.
but it still involved human connection. But,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, Victoria and I used to play Roller Coaster Tycoon. And
Oh,
I had two computers set up, and we had just a little bitty house at the time, and we had a bedroom that was, well, actually, one of the kids slept in there, like one of the babies did, and then we had two computers, and we'd sit there with chips and queso and drinking Cokes, and we'd play Roller Coaster Tycoon, and I mean, it was good. It was fun, but it's just even different than like nowadays. But
you said something a little earlier that made me think that, because you're right. Scripture says that Satan broadcasts his ideas and his thoughts, and I mean that's the noise, right?
Yeah.
The noise that we're picking up on throughout our day. is coming from the different ideas and just things that he's throwing out there to see, again, like to your point, what will get caught, what will catch Matthew up, right? What will distract him from what his plan was for the day. And it's interesting, just again, the noise and how he broadcasts and how that all works together.
He's the prince of the power of the air. And I mean, you think about air and all of the different avenues now, like radio and just streaming and the internet and how all of it is connected together and everything. I just think that's a really interesting scripture when you think about it now. When you think about Prince of the Power of the Air, and you're like, who is really behind all of this?
You know what's fascinating about that is he doesn't need, talking about Satan now, he doesn't need that media necessarily. The media makes it easy for him,
Yeah.
right? Because we can ingest something that tantalizes one of the senses, right? Particularly sight and sound. So, the podcast and video and YouTube and all those things are an easy medium for him. But he can be just as effective when you're sitting in a park with no Wi-Fi, with nothing but your thoughts. Mm-hmm. And he can inject those thoughts into your mind, even in that context.
Yeah.
And so, for sure, I think it's super important to be very, very strict around what we're ingesting into our minds through those mediums. But again, going back to the mind, right? I mean, we need to be just as vigilant, making sure that we're not entertaining just random thoughts that come into our minds, because those thoughts can then start amplifying and growing and becoming huge distractions. And it hasn't taken anything external.
Right.
I think about that a lot.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to, like yesterday and the sermon that I gave in compromise and drifting. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And you can drift with no other influence than your own mind. And that's exactly, you can kind of think about those waves coming through, and you're just sitting there at the park and you're thinking about, well, did I say something to actually upset him? And now he's probably mad at me.
Or what did that person mean?
Yeah,
and I'm going to get upset about it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to play it into something that it wasn't. And now I hate the person.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. So that's interesting, because that's how we start to drift. And then you think about all the different influences and all the noise. You're scrolling instead of actually reading a book, or instead of interacting here, we're just interacting online and, comparing instead of building relationships. And pretty soon you wake up and you're like, whoa, how did I get where I am? How did I drift this far off? And it's so, I mean, that's actually really, really impactful.
Let me ask you guys a question. Something I struggle with, just talking about the mind, is I everyone likes to think. I consider myself a thinker. That's just, I'll drive in the car and I won't switch the radio on. I won't listen to a podcast. I just like to be with my thoughts and just kind of churn through them, which is a blessing and it's a curse because of that very reason, right? I can very, very easily, latch onto either a negative thought or an unhelpful thought and playing it up. And, next thing I know, I've built this thing into something in my mind that it is not. And we know that the scripture says that we are to bring all of our thoughts into captivity. What kind of ways do you guys do that? I mean, when you have thoughts that pop into your mind, do you have tricks that you use, like just psychologically, to capture them, to put them into that captivity? I mean, what do you guys do?
I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, I do two things, and I don't do it well all the time, because sometimes I just get off track and I'm like, why am I thinking so much about all this, whatever? But I do a breathing where I just,
mindfulness.
I do. And yeah. And I just say in and out and in and out. And I actually say it in my head because it keeps me distracted from whatever it was that I was thinking about or what was bothering me. But then the other thing too is kind of like a filter mechanism. If you think about a thought coming in, maybe churn it a little bit and decide, okay, this isn't helpful. This isn't good. And then you try to kind of let it go and distract yourself, like moving on to something else. Obviously, don't distract yourself from driving your car. But the breathing helps me a lot. It really does. And I don't do it all the time because I don't know if you guys ever feel this way, but sometimes it's like you just want to. You just want to do whatever it is you're doing.
Or you just want to think about it. You
Yes.
want to ruminate, right? And
Exactly.
rumination can be so helpful on the right things, and it can be so harmful
Detrimental. Yeah.
on the wrong things.
And that's what I do is I sit here and I think about it, and then it's like I build up and up and up, and then all of a sudden I'm like, what are you doing?
yeah. Right.
Stop.
Where have I been for the last 20
that?
minutes?
Yeah. No, the breathing, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I think what I do a lot of times if I feel like, okay, I'm going down a rabbit hole on something, or, there's thoughts or something has come into my mind that I don't want there, that shouldn't be there. Like, I will ask myself, and if I'm in the car, sometimes, I'll just say it out loud, if not to myself, of like, where did that thought come from? Why are you thinking that? Because I don't know if there's any science behind it, and if it wouldn't work for everybody, but for me, then it forces me to, I guess, take the emotion out of that moment and be just very like, okay, where does it come from? Why? And then work through that. Okay, yeah, that's not my thought. That's not what I want to be thinking about. Maybe I saw a billboard, or maybe, the song thought of a memory, or whatever it is, and then kind of be able to work through. No, I don't want that in my mind. I'm going to think about something else. Obviously, I don't always do that perfectly.
Yeah.
But I have tried to do that more often to think through, okay, where's that coming from, and how do I get rid of it?
Yeah. Well, I really, I have told you guys I struggle with some addictions, and I was using an app for a while just to help me kind of methodically step through, and you just use it every day, 10, 20 minutes or whatever, and it would have mindfulness, and then it would just have you do that breathing, and I just started applying it in other areas. Plus, I just sometimes, I don't know if it's society or if it's just me in general. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I struggle with anxiety because I've got so much that I'm trying to do and that I think I need to do. And then I get just kind of worked up, and I'll get that tightness and everything. Is the contract going to close? Did I get this presentation done? Oh, I've got this meeting, and I've got these 10 things I'm supposed to do.
That is such a huge source of noise.
Yeah,
is worry.
absolutely. It is.
Focusing on what has not happened in the future, and fixating on what tomorrow might bring, or the next day. And
Yeah.
I'm the same as you. I mean, my mind will go into an absolute tizzy thinking about, what if this, what if that, what if, the other. And it's so unhelpful most of the time. And it can be hugely draining and burdensome, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if
absolutely.
if you allow that thought to grab hold, you're not going to be a present husband or father or colleague or whatever. And so worry is such a huge thought distraction and noise.
I wrote out a quote, and I'm not going to remember it exactly, but it's basically, I think it was Mark Twain, and he said, he basically talks about worry, and he says most of the worry that I've focused on are on things that never even came to pass. And I put it up just because it's so true. We worry about things. I think the statistic said 93% of what you worry about.
I that resonates with me for some reason. Like at that high. Like 90% of the things we worry about never
even
happen.
come to pass. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I just think about things. I'm like, well, and it's noise. It really is noise, because it's like, well, what if this happens, and what if that? And Victoria and I always discuss it, and she's like, well, you think you're planning and you're preparing, but you're not. You're just ruining the day for yourself because you're thinking about all these things that are never even going to happen. Like, we build this house, and then I'm like, well, what if I lose this contract, or if I lose that? And she's like, so we'll figure something else out. But thinking about all those things and ruminating on them, it's just ruining the day that I have right now. So do you guys ever think about areas where you've lowered your standards? Like where you've let things kind of sink in, like come into your life, noise that's allowed you to then kind of lower your standards when you think about, well, I want to be this person. I would rather be reading the Bible or praying or a better husband or more involved with my kids or whatever. Do you guys ever think about, well, these are things that I'm allowing to me kind of drift and lower my standards. Do you guys ever feel like you're doing that?
I think we all have, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
unintentionally, well, I wouldn't say unintentionally, but I just think we all, if you look at society as a whole, right? Again, going back to my childhood, I remember when you couldn't say, a 3-lettered word on TV without getting, banned off of the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, these days, you can put on public TV and hear all sorts of language
Yeah.
that you would have never heard
Yeah.
a decade, 2 decades ago. And so it's almost like society in mass has lowered their standard, right? And it's only, I just think about my life, right? I mean, the kinds of shows that I'm watching, the kinds of, I don't know why I like watching murder mysteries and those kinds of documentaries. And I have to sit and ask myself, well, why am I into this? Like,
Yeah.
this is someone's life. But definitely, I think the kind of content that is available now. Have you ever kind of gone back in time, so to speak, and watched like one of the old Hallmark movies, like the old
Yeah.
my father-in-law, Veronica's dad. He's one of the most wholesome people I've ever met.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll walk into the room if he's around or if I'm at his house, and he'll be watching old 60s westerns. And
Oh,
he
yeah.
loves. I'm like, that's so wholesome.
They're good.
And then,
Yeah. No.
and then you compare it against the trash that we have on TV
Yeah.
now. It's like, wow, what a different standard.
Yep. Yep.
So I think the standard has dropped across.
Well,
the
you know-
Yeah, entertainment. I got a story that popped in
Yeah,
my head
yeah.
that I'll share. So I think it is entertainment, and I think we all do it. This was, several years ago. Obviously, being in sales, and I used to have some big geography, so I would be in the car 4 or 5 hours a day easily, and this was even before podcast time. But satellite radio was big, and so I found a show that was a couple of guys in their 20s, maybe young 30s, and they were funny, and they were just telling life stories, guy stories, their dating life. Not always appropriate. It's on satellite radio.
Mm-hmm.
Guy humor, funny, but not appropriate. But I listened to that for probably longer than I want to admit. I mean, several years.
It's like South Park.
But it was to the point though that like even Betsy, she was. I could tell like I wasn't being as respectful to her, and I was just. It just was kind of that. It just kind of left you feeling dirty, right? I'd be either praying or reading the Bible, and a story would pop in my mind from earlier that day or earlier that week that was funny. It wasn't good,
Right.
And so as you were talking about that story popped in my mind for some reason but that's a time I remember in my life where I lowered my standards, and there was a direct correlation. Like I said, I didn't treat Betsy as respectful I should have, and it just kind of left you feeling a little guilty inside, and then that affected again how patient you are with the kids because you don't feel good about yourself but in some ways you're kind of addicted to it because it's like, well, it's on the next morning, and I want what happened tonight on their date. I want to hear about it. So yeah, but to me, entertainment. And
Well,
for sure, yeah.
going back to what you were saying, and I don't know, do you guys remember this, or am I misremembering this? But thinking about how TV's changed, even advertising. Because when I was a kid, I thought there was like I don't know if it was an unspoken law or whatever, but if you worked for Nike and you had a Nike commercial and you were going to compare your shoe to Adidas, you didn't say Adidas. You just said, well, this other brand. And you could maybe figure out what the other brand was. But nowadays, it's just like Nike will put a commercial out and they'll be like, yeah, Adidas is awful. They're trash. Am I misremembering that?
No. I mean, look, I don't know if the rules, I'm sure they have. I'm sure the advertising rules have changed because, again, I grew up in a different country where you could not, it was illegal from an advertising, a regulatory standpoint to name another product.
That's what I thought too.
And that forced them to be like really creative. I mean, there's a couple that come to mind that were just genius ads, right? And those are the kinds of ads worth watching, right? I mean, no one wants to watch this shoe sucks because it's Adidas. It's like, it's so cheap. But that's what politics is, right?
Yeah.
It's like, tell me something about what you are good at. I don't want to hear from you what the other guy, sucks at or does wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's just, the state to which we have devolved
Yeah.
as a society, right? Someone once taught me a lesson early on in life. He asked me, said, Stephen, what's the quickest way in life to get ahead? And I, thought about it, and he goes, well, you just claw your way over the other guy, climb on the other guy.
Yeah.
You don't have to prove anything for yourself. Just diss the other guy.
Yeah.
And he wasn't encouraging me to do it. He was just giving me a lesson about, hey, this is kind of the society that you live in, right? In business, in the world, in politics, no matter in school, no matter where you are, people figure out very quickly that there is an easier way to rise to the top.
Yeah.
And you're not raising your own standard, you're just pushing everyone down. I don't know how I got into that point. But
No, I think it's awesome though. And if you think about it, I mean, it all ties back to kind of like this whole compromise and drift and all of that.
Yeah.
I think drift is more dangerous than failure, because drift, I'm just like failure. I'm trying.
it's like the boiling, the frog in the pot.
yeah.
Right?
Yes.
It's like you don't know you're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
It's you've become so accustomed, and things just start. And that's, I think, we spoke about, the satanic influence, right? I do believe that is, if you look back over history, right, that's been the approach, is just a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. It also talks about making sure that our consciences don't become seared, right? And I think that's the whole point, right? If we were to go and, now immediately go and switch on a show that had, crazy scenes in it and language, that would be shocking, right? But if you started watching that show or listening to that show of yours, Matt, and every day they just inserted one word and it was subtle, and then the next day something more, like you would gradually become accustomed to it. And that's essentially what's happened. And that is essentially the way I interpreted your message yesterday, Chris, was, hey, look, be careful you may not know you're in that drift.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. That drift can sometimes take you without you even knowing that you're in it. And so to have the awareness, the mindfulness to be present, to know, well, hang on a second, what is going on over here?
Yes.
And be grounded on what those priorities and those standards are that you mentioned. But let me ask another question, if I can. So we spoke about worry, and we spoke about how worry can be a huge distraction. What about ruminating on the past? Things that have happened, things that were maybe good, right? It's much easier to ruminate on the things that are good and, be happy about it. But what about ruminating on the things in the past that we're guilty of, or maybe we've done something to someone else, maybe we've said something, or maybe someone has said something to us, or what are your thoughts on that?
Man, it is so dangerous. It really is. And I'm the worst at it. And you guys know me. I always kind of wear my heart on my sleeve, but I had to read a book called Retroactive Jealousy. So silly. But Victoria dated other guys before me. And at some point, I mean, we've been together 26 years, probably the last 16, I at least haven't thought about, I wonder if she would have married me if it would have worked out with Jimmy over there or whatever. And so I ruminate on those kind of things. Nothing I could do about it. And it was so wild and random. And I would just like even ask questions sometimes. Like, do you think you settled because, you were getting older and, just stuff like that. So I definitely, I read a book on retroactive jealousy. And it helped me in other areas because it says, just general principles are, it's unhealthy. And the other thing too is if you're going to make it right, I do something to you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, don't just let it go. If I feel like it's necessary for me and it's safe, kind of like the 12-step program, make amends with those people who you've offended or hurt or done something to, then I think that's something to because a lot of times that rumination and that, in my opinion, thinking about things, it keeps you trapped. And the other person probably has moved on or isn't even thinking about it anymore. But if they are, then me coming to you and saying, hey, I wasn't a good person then, or I did this or I did that, and I'm sorry. And you have to do it within, I mean, personally, knowing 12-step program, you have to do it within context and, safe
Sure.
space. But I don't know about you guys, but yeah, I've struggled with ruminating on the past and ruminating on other people's past, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what it is, right? I think there's different buckets that this falls into. I mean, there's some things that, what's the saying, that those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it, right? So there's some things that, we want to keep the memory of because for whatever reason, right? It's sometimes like, well, I don't want to do that again because of this, and I've learned a lesson. And then there's other things that, to your point, that it could just be noise because it's meant to, make you feel bad, about yourself. Maybe it was a major sin. God has already forgiven you, right? It's been wiped out, but you can't forget it. And it lowers your self-esteem and you feel like, oh, well, God doesn't really love me, or how could God want me in his family because I did this?
Yeah.
Which that isn't healthy. And,
Right.
and that's, we shouldn't be doing that. So I guess it depends on the bucket it falls in.
Yeah.
But I guess to your point, Stephen, yeah, I mean, that can be dangerous if that's noise that's constantly in our head too, that's devaluing us, from a perspective of, especially how God sees us.
Well, I think it's really, really critical and important to think about because it is noise, and it can generate so much. Well, somebody, your friend, Daniel, made a good comment about that girl that said whatever at the Disney thing.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, I'm letting her rent too much space in my head.
Yeah.
She's rent free or something
Right,
like
yeah.
that. And I was like, yeah, that is really true. And that's what happens is those things take over and they fester and they grow. And then you tune out actual wisdom. Like you don't even hear real wisdom because there's so much noise and so much, like we could invite Victoria in here and she would just laugh and be like, oh yes, Chris is the ultimate ruminator on the past. What about you? I mean, do you?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Because you asked the question, so I was just wondering.
Look, I have a lot of struggles in my life, as you guys know. But one of the things that I think I struggle with the most is allowing my mind to kind of, grow legs, so to speak, and kind of run off into a direction. And it's something actually that I've been struggling with here a lot the last couple of years. Like I've had almost 2 years now, like pretty bad insomnia, and a lot of that is all thoughts. It's all just thoughts, right? It started off with one bad night, and then the next night I was like, well, what if I don't sleep again this night? And then next thing you know, it's 3 nights in a row. Next thing you know, it's 2 years just struggling with this thought. And so I've been spending a lot of time kind of going through, trying to figure out, okay, how to control my thoughts, which has been so helpful, not just as it relates to sleep, but helpful as it relates to other issues, right? I've been able to so I'll tell you guys, just in full transparency here. So I went to a sleep coach, didn't like her, went to another sleep coach, and a lot of it was around mindfulness as well, right? The breathing techniques, focus on the present. The only thing that you have in your life is this moment. The past is behind you. The future's not happened yet. So just focus on the present. Easier said than done, but that's the first thing. Mindfulness is huge. And then I went and I went through a whole program around just, mindfulness and kind of controlling your thoughts and things of that nature, which ultimately became a big blessing to me because it helped me in so many other areas of my life, in any other capacity where maybe anxiety was involved, right? Anxiety is just your body's response to something that it thinks is a threat, right? Whether it's standing up and giving a message, or whether it's, playing the piano in front of people, or whatever it is. And so learning how to manage that through kind of thought techniques, and again, I think goes directly to the theme of kind of blocking out distractions and blocking out noise. And the scriptures that have kind of been sitting with me, consistently the last couple of years are, bringing all your thoughts into captivity, number one. Number two, those things that are wonderful, those things that are beautiful, those things that are joyous. Meditate on these things, right? And then, of course, do not worry, right? Because, today's worries are sufficient for themselves. Let tomorrow be tomorrow. And so it's actually been, for me, actually a blessing in disguise, being able to really kind of think inwardly about, okay, how am I structuring my thoughts? How am I allowing my mind to not be in control? Or so, how, said differently, how am I allowing my mind to be in control outside of me controlling it myself? So anyway, that's why I asked those specific questions, because that's just something that has kind of been rattling around in my mind, and it's a huge distraction.
Yeah. Well, you think about, like, fruit grows in quiet places. I mean, because roots grow underground. And the whole idea of this podcast is, if you want real fruit in your life, we got to focus on the quiet space sometimes versus the loud validation. Meaning, I just need to be reflecting. I need to take a step back. I need to live in a quiet space sometimes, instead of, like you were talking about, social media and people putting everything out there, and that's all you see is all the good stuff. You don't see the turmoil behind the scenes, because nobody shares that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that, just thinking about what you just said and kind of working on that headspace, those are the things that you've got to do. Otherwise, you'll just live a life of quiet desperation. I mean, I really think that.
It brought a whole new meaning to me of the concept of the days of unleavened bread.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we speak a lot about, and obviously this is coming up, right? The days of unleavened bread. And we speak a lot about, you got to remove the leaven from your life, but that's really not the command. The command is you must add unleavened bread to your life.
Yeah.
And it's brought new meaning to me, because that is all about filling your mind with the right things. Yes, you've got to remove the bad things from your mind, but more important than that, for me, is filling the mind with the right things. Because if you fill the mind with the right things, again, as a man thinketh, the author describes your mind as a garden.
Yeah.
Those things that you sow into the garden and that you care for and that you nurture will grow into outward fruits. And I think that's the central lesson that this struggle that I've been going through has kind of taught me, and also a cleaner correlation between what it really means to observe something like the days of unleavened bread.
Yeah. Well, I think something to think about is, are we seeking validation? Because sometimes I do. Like, I want, if somebody tells me, hey, that's a good message you gave, or good presentation, or good this, that, whatever. I wonder sometimes, are we seeking validation, or am I actually seeking growth? Like, am I really changing and growing as a person? That's what the days of unleavened bread helps me personally with, is, like you said, it isn't just about what you take out. It's about what you put in. I don't know about.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's good. I always look at it as kind of an alignment. It's like, am I aligned with God, or am I, 10 degrees off one way or another? Because any time in my life where I allowed myself to get out of alignment, then things start going down. Whenever I was listening to the radio show, I mean, I knew it was wrong, right? I mean, I knew the things they were talking about were not appropriate, but I made excuses for it, and I was out of alignment. And so yeah, whether it's, and that's really what I mean. You talked about the scripture that says, meditate on these things, because God has made our mind not to be empty. He puts thoughts in our mind as well. Right? I mean, we talk about Satan do, but God, that when we know we're doing something not right, and that thought comes in my mind, it comes in my mind of like, what are you doing, Matthew? Like, better. I mean, that's God. He's talking to me. Like, hey, wake up.
Yeah.
Do what you're supposed to do. So it's not that our minds are supposed to be empty, but our minds are supposed to have the thoughts of God in them. And whenever we don't do that, then we start struggling.
Yeah.
At least I've seen that in my life. And so, but the more I focus, the more godly things I have in my mind, the better I do.
Yeah. Well, think about, you just said alignment. Think about your car. when your wheels are unaligned, the tires wear out faster, and then you got to buy new. And I think about when I'm not aligned, I wear out faster. Like you talked about earlier, you get frustrated with the kids, or you get angry and you don't really know why. And you do know why, but you're inside, you're like, well, I can't stop doing this. I enjoy that podcast or that show, or I enjoy doing whatever it is just because of a dopamine rush or whatever it is you get. But when you're not aligned with the right principles, godly or whatever it could be, then it's like you're veering off the path, and pretty soon you've drifted so far. You're like, how did I get here? How did I get in this place? So, when you guys think about it, do you guys feel like you ever just develop a root system, or you work on things just for who you want people to think that you are? Like, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I was just thinking about it. Like, do you ever do things where you're just like, I'm just doing that because I know it's what people expect of me or what I should be doing, when deep down it's not really who I am?
It's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
Because you can do the right. So it's the question. The thing that was going through my mind is, what is better, doing the right thing for the wrong reason or the wrong thing for the right reason?
Yeah.
And so both can be good and both can be bad, right? So was it you last week? Yeah, you gave a message on service last week, and you were saying, well, sometimes I would serve hoping that people would see. I mean, we've all done that.
Yes.
Right? Does that make it bad?
Right.
Right. I mean, you're still performing a function that's helpful and useful. I mean, it's probably not the exact heart that God wants, but you're still, like, there's a payoff for everything, right? Everything in life has a payoff. I mean, that's how we as human beings are conditioned and wired. It's kind of a reward system. Everything in our minds is, we do something, there's going to be a payoff, right? It's a risk reward or a benefit reward system. And so the answer is yes. I mean, I think everyone does that.
Yeah.
Right. Is it always bad? I don't know.
Well, I think about, like, why was David a man after God's own heart when he did things wrong? And I think it's because God knew his heart ultimately. Like, he knew what he was really all about. And so I think sometimes, yeah, it does. Like, I don't think you'll reap the benefits of service, and I know this personally just from my perspective, because if you're serving in the wrong mindset, you're not really.
It's very shallow, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very shallow, right?
Yeah.
And I think you made the point as well, right? If you look at Christ and the service in his life, right, he did it expecting nothing. There's nothing that anyone could do for Christ, nothing. And he came down and he served human beings, expecting nothing in return. It was all a one-way transaction.
Yeah.
That's a deep, deep, deep level of Christian maturity. But you've got to start somewhere. And so if you are young in the church, and if you are, folding chairs or stacking tables and thinking, oh man, I hope the minister sees me, or Matthew checks me out.
Yeah. Does Matthew see me?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a bad place to start.
I mean,
I think you'll grow out of that, right? I think you'll ultimately
Yeah.
learn to get satisfaction from a different level, knowing, hey, that God is seeing it,
Right.
and God will reward me for this.
Yes.
Um,
No, I would agree with that. Definitely. And you have to think about that. Like, sometimes, think about working out. Sometimes you work out because you should, even though, like, your motivation.
You don't feel like it that day.
Yeah. But your motivation may be, I want this girl to think I look good.
Could have been a bathing suit in 2 weeks. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
go for that run.
Yeah.
Well, and I think to your point is, I don't think you can't hide your roots, right? I think that's the point of, like, the first time we got together, and we're talking about the foundation. Like, you're going to be who you are. You can't hide that forever. And so I think there's a difference in, we can have our roots being in our faith and in God, but we're still going to have times we mess up. And so, but that doesn't mean that we're a hypocrite. It doesn't mean that our roots aren't where they need to be. It's just, okay, I messed up, and God works with imperfect people. I mean, that's David. I mean, David's the definition of imperfect, but as soon as it was brought to his attention, I mean, I love the story when Nathan's telling him that story, and he goes,
Yeah.
"You're that man," and David is immediately, "God, what have I done?"
Yeah.
And that's why God loved David so dearly. It's because as soon as it was brought to his attention that he had sinned, he didn't make excuses. He didn't blame someone else. He was immediately, God, what have I done? And I think that's what God looks for in us, is that we're going to mess up, but when it's brought to our attention, do we make excuses, or do we just immediately, God, what have I done?
Yeah.
Forgive me and help me to learn from this lesson, not to dwell on it, but to learn from it, and be better.
Yeah.
Awareness is so important, right? I once had someone say to me, and I can teach a lot of things, but the one thing I cannot teach is awareness, self-awareness. And that story of Nathan, I think, is the most genius way to detach David from the natural emotion that he would have had if Nathan came up to him and said, "Hey, David, I have this issue with you." Immediately he's going to become defensive and throw up his walls and look for excuses. And so I always think it's so genius the way Nathan did it, right? Because he first played the story and he removed David from being personally emotionally attached to the story. And then when he rose David up to this, I mean, what it says. It goes, who is this man?
Yeah, who is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will kill him, his family, everything, take everything away from him. And then that's when Nathan was like, well, you're that man, David. And so now David had a way of attaching that awareness, to himself.
Yeah.
And I mean, to your point, Matt, once he had that awareness, he immediately changed. But I think that's something important for us to get to in our life, right? Is, do we have that awareness, right? Sometimes we do things in our lives unaware. Sometimes we say things unaware. This is, I think, one of the most valuable things about being married, right? Is, our wives, each one of them, I know all of our wives, and I think they're all very good at bringing to our attention our, weaknesses and inefficiencies and failures in a loving, kind way. It's not always easy to hear.
Sure.
But are we David in that regard, where we accept that feedback and that truth as, wow, I have to own this.
Yeah.
I have to do better. It's because it's so easy to justify, make excuses,
Become
blame someone
defensive.
else. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that lack of awareness in itself can be a noise,
Yep.
can be a distraction.
Yep. Well, as we start to wrap this up just a little bit, I'd put down some practical next steps, because I do want people to be able to have some takeaways, some things that they could do. You guys may agree with these, maybe you don't, but you have to audit your inputs. You have to think about, okay, what is it? Just like we talked about, what is it that I'm allowing into my mind? What is it that I'm thinking about? What is it that I'm focused on? So audit your inputs. And you've talked about it quite a bit, mindfulness, but just seek daily silence, giving yourself some time to just not ruminate on the past or whatever, but just kind of sitting in silence and being able to kind of relax. And then I think this is really critical. Define yourself before the world does. Because I think that's what a lot of young people struggle with. Maybe even people my age or older.
Everyone does.
Everyone is what is it? What is it that I'm supposed to be? Like who does the world think that I should be? Because then I'll go and be it. Versus who does God need me to be? Like who should I be and why? And you need to define that, and you need to understand it at a really deep level. And the sooner you do, the better off you are, because otherwise you'll do all these things like we've talked about where you're like, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I thought that. I don't know why I said that. And when you can, it's really wisdom, trying to seek wisdom, because you can't build discipline in your lives with a bunch of chaotic input, a bunch of things going on.
That's that is the complete opposite of discipline.
Yeah.
Is chaos.
Yeah, it really is. Yep. So I think some things to think about are what are some things that you can remove from your lives. And, like you talked about, turning off that show or...
Right. No, at some point, which thankfully finally did happen.
Did you stop watching?
Yes, yeah, no. I was gonna say I need to finish the story because people would be like, "Well, is he still listening to it?" No. At some point, it was my conscience became enough. It's like I've got to stop this. Like I can't. I mean, I was excusing. I mean, you know how it is, guys. I mean, you come up with every excuse why it's not that bad. It's okay. Betsy's overreacting, right? Whatever it is. And no, I finally my conscience was enough that I was like, I got to stop doing this. And so I found another show. I think I probably went back to sports talk is probably what I did. And then, other things. But yeah, no, eventually I was like, no, I got to stop this because it's wrong. It's wrong. And I know it's not pleasing to God and it's not benefiting my life at all.
Yeah.
When you think about it, that is why God gives us that instruction, is to not, ingest those things. Mm-hmm. Is because it hurts us first and foremost.
Yeah.
And then secondarily, it hurts those around us.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, we've kind of created this, that Charlie Brown character that walks around with a blanket with the dust everywhere he goes. That's kind of how this can ultimately become, right? Is you can very, very easily. I mean, my story on that is rap music, gangster rap. That was that was the stuff I liked to listen to as a kid. And filthy, right? Filthy. And like the way that bad language would then start flowing out of my mouth, like dropping the F-bomb, like wasn't a big deal because, well, that's what I'm listening to all day. And so I had to stop listening to that as well because it just becomes so easy to mirror the things that it's the old, you are what you eat, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Too easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we'll close on one comment. Not everything loud deserves your attention. I know that society today tries to attract us into all of these things like we talked about, news and sensationalizing things. But we got to remember, the more we focus on the more important things, God, our family, being the best person that we can be, the better off we will be, as opposed to all of these inputs that can lead us down these wrong paths. So appreciate you guys being here today.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, enjoyed it. So it's fun.
Awesome.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciated Matthew and Stephen being a part of this conversation. We're looking forward to many more episodes. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and if you have questions, you can submit them at info@karposlifepodcast.com. We'll see you next month.